I swear to God, I didn't know there were people in the trailer. Not at first. 45 years old, 20 years on the road, and I thought I'd seen every kind of load you could haul across this country. Frozen meat, electronics, even coffins once. But nothing. Nothing prepared me for what I found behind that sealed door on a dead silent Texas highway. You ever hear something knocking from inside your own trailer at 2 in the morning? A sound that doesn't belong to steel or cargo or the wind? When I stopped and opened those doors, I didn't just break a seal. I tore open the last piece of my life that still made sense. Now the cops say I'm a smuggler. The feds say I'm a criminal. But I know what I heard. I know what I saw. And if you keep listening, you will too. Don't go anywhere. Hit that like button, subscribe, and stay with me till the end. Because by the time I tell you what was really inside that trailer, you won't sleep tonight. Mike Donovan liked the way the highway pressed down the nerves in his shoulders, the way the white lines slid under his wheels and carried off whatever was left of a bad day. The cab of his rig, an aging blue Kenworth he called Birdie because she sang when she was happy, smelled of coffee, diesel, and the orange hand cleaner that never quite left his knuckles. He was 45, divorced, with a daughter in Missouri who sometimes answered his texts and sometimes didn't. He kept a photo of her on the dash, Evelyn standing in a creek in cutoffs, sun lighting up her hair, clipped right next to his laminated Department of Transportation card. Some nights, he talked to that photo more than he spoke to anyone else. It was just after first light when the call came through. Not the kind of gentle buzz that says a friend wants to catch up, but the urgent chirp that marks money on the line. He was parked off Interstate 35 at a lot that sold breakfast burritos rolled so tight they'd survive a tornado. A pair of sparrows picked at a crumb near the fuel pumps. The air held that West Texas blend of dust and promise. He sipped lukewarm coffee and thumbed the green button. "Donovan," he said. He always answered like that. The single name made him feel like part of a team, even when the team was just him. "Mike, my man." The voice was sandpapered smooth, a radio DJ's grin hidden inside. "Benny Morales. Haven't said howdy in too damn long." Benny. Old days in Oklahoma City. Loads that paid on time. A laugh that slid into places it didn't belong. "What's the work, Benny?" "Quick turn out of Laredo. Cross-dock pickup, reefer. You're the closest I trust, and I need a good driver who won't mind rolling quiet. Pays real sweet." Every driver learns to hear the varnish on a sentence. "Rolling quiet," Mike repeated. "Reefer load. Produce?" "Chilled vegetables," Benny said. "Zucchini, romaine, the green stuff. The shipper's name you'll get on the rate con. Deliver in Denver by the day after tomorrow, before noon. You know the drill." Mike set the phone on speaker and balanced it on the dash while he unfolded a paper map, old habit, even though his GPS ran just fine. Laredo to Denver was a long spine of America. Scrub and Sun, the river at your elbow, the long brown elbow of New Mexico, the lift of Colorado. He watched a tanker slip past the station, chrome bright as a baptismal font. "What's the rate?" he asked. Benny named a number that made Mike blow out a breath. That was better than sweet. That was honey in the comb. Too good. Loads like that usually hit a snag, a window too tight, a receiver that made you bake for hours at the dock, a broker with a nervous twitch. "Why so high?" Mike asked. "Market's hot," Benny replied without missing a beat. "Denver's light on produce this week. You know how it is. And it's me, for Christ's sake. I take care of my people." The burrito stand bell jingled. A man in a straw hat walked out carrying a paper sack the size of his heart. The sun worked its way up the sky with the patient certainty of a time clock punch. "How tight's the appointment?" Mike asked. "You said day after tomorrow by noon?" "Before noon," Benny said. "Early is better. They're a little old school up there. They'll love you for being early. And listen, you fuel in San Antonio, not in Laredo. I'll add a surcharge for that. Just keep it moving." Mike rubbed the stubble along his jaw. Early would mean hustling, but not impossible. The Kenworth's diesel had behaved lately. He'd replaced the belts in Amarillo, and the mechanic had said, with the reverence of a preacher, "She'll run like a hymn." Besides, Mike had been waiting for a load that would knock a chunk off the credit card he hated to look at. Winter had been thin. The divorce had been thinner. "You got a shipper contact?" he asked. "Texting you now," Benny said. "South Side warehouse cluster near Mines Road. They'll have it staged. You'll see a guy named Alvarez at the gate. Just tell him you're Donovan for the Romaine run. You still running your own authority?" "I am." "Good," Benny said. "Keeps it simple. No extra hands in the pie." The text, when it came, had the address, a purchase order string longer than his attention span, and a bold line that read, "Keep sealed. Do not break." It didn't spook Mike. Use sealed produce to keep the temperature and the bureaucrats happy. Still, there was a tone to that capitalized line, like a sergeant yelling when a word would do. "I'll take it," Mike said. "Knew you would." Benny's smile crossed the miles. "You're the best I got. Call me when you're loaded." The call ended. Mike finished his coffee and took the first bite of his burrito, egg and potato, and a mild salsa that whispered of cilantro instead of slapping him with it. He checked the reefer unit through the cab window. The digital readout purred at the set temperature he'd punched in last night. He thought about the rate again. Too good. He thought about his daughter's last text, "Just busy, Dad," and how the period at the end of it had felt like a closing door. He folded the burrito in the paper and slid it into the passenger seat's net. Then he fired up Birdie, felt the engine's rumble settle into his bones, and pulled onto the highway. By mid-morning, he was crossing into Laredo, city of warehouses and palms and the river that braided stories through the lives on both sides. The line of trucks pushing toward the bridge looked like a steel-plated caterpillar inching north. The radio chewed through a weather report. Heat rising, a wind later that might kick dust like a mule. He found the warehouse park off Mines Road, a maze of chain-link fences and guard shacks that all smelled like sun-baked plastic. The sign for Alvarez's outfit was nothing more than black stencil on a corrugated tin wall. Estrada Brothers Cold Storage. At the gate, a guard with a baseball cap pulled low, checked his bill of lading, then motioned him forward with the bored flick of someone whose day never changes. "Dock 5, the guard said. "Back it in straight. You stand by your truck. No wandering. They'll bring the paperwork." "Copy that," Mike said. He backed into Dock 5 with the easy grace of long practice, aligning the trailer to the rubber bumpers until the thud told him he was home. He set the brakes. The dock door rose behind him. The thrum of forklifts echoed from within like the heartbeat of a giant animal. A man in a gray fleece vest approached, tablet in hand. He had the weary competence of someone who had seen every possible way a driver could ruin a simple afternoon. "Donovan?" he asked. "That's me." "You're the romaine. We'll top with zucchini. Temperature set at 34? He didn't wait for an answer. "We'll load fast. Busy day." He handed Mike a formed sign. "Keep sealed. Do not break" sat there in thick block letters, a command rather than a request. Underneath, any breach voids contract and liability. Mike ran his finger along the line. "You boys must have had a problem once," he said, casual, the way a man asks without asking. Everyone's had a problem once, the man in the vest replied, not unkind. You stick to your side, and we stick to ours. Fair enough, Mike said. He checked his reefer unit again, more out of habit than worry. The compressor hummed steady. The readout clicked 1/10 of a degree and then swung back. He walked the length of his trailer, eyes tracing tires, mud flaps, the reflective tape that would catch even a drunk's headlights on a dark night. A forklift beeped and vanished into the cavern of the dock. A second beep answered it, a metallic conversation that needed no words. Loading always took longer when someone promised it would be quick. Mike leaned against his grill guard and watched the sun burn a hole straight down into the sidewalk. A young warehouse hand passing by glanced at his truck. Nice Kenworth, the kid said. My uncle drove, back in the day. World needs more uncles like that, Mike replied, just to say something that wasn't the sound of his own breath. The kid smiled and disappeared, and a little while later came back again, pushing a wooden pallet jack through he had no pallet. Maybe he needed movement. Maybe he wanted to keep near the cool shadow thrown by Birdie. He was thin and brown and had the kind of eyes that carried too much history for a face that young. You from around here? Mike asked. Nuevo Laredo, the kid said. But I got papers. He added it like a shield. My mom cleaning hotels. Me doing this. Work is work, Mike said. The kid nodded. He glanced at the trailer doors. They make you seal it? He asked. Yeah, Mike said. Standard these days. Sometimes they seal it like they're afraid of the air, the kid said, and his mouth tugged in a half-smile that wasn't a smile. Different kinds of cold in this world, you know. Cold from machines, cold from people. Mike didn't know what to say to that. He thought about the line on the paperwork. He thought about the rate again. Then he shook the thoughts loose. You could bust your head open on questions that were none of your business. The man in the vest returned with a coil of bright new bolt seals and a handheld crimper. You'll sign here for chain of custody, he said, pointing. This seal number matches your paperwork. You don't cut it till the receiver does. If a cop asks to open, you have them call the shipper number on the rate con. We good? Good, Mike said. He signed where the man's calloused finger landed. The crimper bit down on the metal with a final click. The warehouse door shut behind them with a rolling thunder. Someone chalked the seal number on the back of Mike's bill of lading, then underlined it, then wrote it again, as if repetition could ward off bad luck. Denver by before noon, the vest said. More a proclamation than a wish. I'll make it, Mike said. On the way out of the yard, the kid with the pallet jack was back at the fence line, shoulders hunched like he could hear something through the chain link that no one else could. He raised a hand. Buenas suertes, he called. Then, in careful English, drive safe. Always do, Mike called back. He had, mostly. You couldn't make it this long on the road if you didn't treat luck like something with a short fuse and a long memory. He hit the freeway, the reefer thrumming steady behind him, the seal number memorized without meaning to. The phone buzzed again, and he thumbed the voice command. Call Benny, he said. Tell me you're rolling, Benny answered on the first ring. Rolling, Mike said. Temperature is steady, seal is set, paperwork in hand. Your money better be as sweet as you promised. You know me, Benny said, sounding pleased and far away. I take care of my people. Mike ended the call and let the miles begin their soft shoveling, burying the noise of the city behind him, shovel by shovel. Laredo thinned to scrub and billboards and the occasional sagging taqueria where the best salsas wore names like murder. He passed a border patrol checkpoint where the green striped trucks sat angled toward the road like crouched dogs. He had nothing to hide and a lot to deliver. The agent waved him on with the blank face of someone who'd already seen too much. The afternoon unspooled. San Antonio rose and fell behind him like a mirage he'd visited and left. He gassed up, as requested, at a station where the cashier had painted his nails sky blue. He bought a bag of ice for the old cooler that usually held nothing but stubborn hope, and a couple of sodas he tried not to drink. He texted his daughter, "Headed north. Hope your day's good." He watched the phone sit there and not answer, which had become its own answer. A hawk rode a thermal just outside the passenger window for a full minute, as if keeping him company. The shadow of it slid over the hood and vanished. West of Uvalde, the land flattened into a ledger that had been wiped clean. The light grew thin and turned every piece of chrome on the trucks he met into quicksilver. He thought about the seal again, the capital letters, the underlines. He thought about Benny. He told himself it was a shipper being a shipper. He told himself money was sometimes just money. He told himself a lot of things, the way men did when their nerves began to whisper and they preferred not to hear. Night came on like a slowly closing hand. He tapped the dash twice, a habit as old as the first time a tire blew out under him, and he did not die. The road between El Paso and the rest of the world has a way of making a man honest or small. Mike felt both. He set his cruise just below the speed that would invite a trooper's boredom. He kept his eyes on the thin, pale ribbon ahead. Birdie hummed her song. The reefer did too. The seal, back there in the dark, sat in its place like a promise no one had bothered to define. He drove deeper into the night and told himself that all he carried was lettuce and squash and the weight of his own quiet. He told himself the air behind him was cold, and that was all. He told himself to keep moving and to keep his hands steady on the wheel and to get to Denver by before noon, because early drivers earn favor, and favor keeps you paid, and paid keeps you free. At a rest area outside Fort Stockton, he pulled in for a quick walk and a refill of the thermos. The sky salted with stars, as if someone had flung a handful and forgot to sweep up. A family with a minivan was sharing sandwiches at a picnic table. A teenager laughed in Spanish and English braided together like a jump rope. Mike stretched, rolled his shoulders, checked the reefer readout one more time. 34. Steady. He felt the hum in his bones like a second pulse. He climbed back into the cab, settled his hat low, and eased out of the lot. The highway took him without comment. South of him, a river slid through darkness. North of him, mountains made a low black promise. The seal on the back doors shone a little in his mirror, a small reflection catching the head beams of the car behind him, a single bright dot riding along. He told himself again what every driver tells himself. What keeps a man moving when the road turns into a song he can't stop humming? It's just a load. It's just a run. It's just the weight you carry until you put it down. He believed it until he didn't. But that was later. For now, he rolled on. The morning peeled itself over the desert like old paint, cracked and pale. Mike had been running since before sunrise, chasing the promise of a cooler day that never came. By the time he hit the outskirts of El Paso, his thermos was dry and his head hummed from caffeine and engine noise. Birdie's dashboard clock blinked 6:45, though the real time didn't matter much. Out here, the sun was the only clock that counted. He pulled into a way station just off the interstate, one of those government rest stops where time went to die and truckers traded gossip like poker chips. The air smelled of diesel, hot rubber, and the faint sweetness of something rotting behind the dumpsters. He didn't usually stop for long, but he needed to stretch and check the load before hitting New Mexico. The reefer gauge read a steady 34 degrees, right where it should be. He ran his hand along the side of the trailer, the metal cool to the touch, even under the morning heat. The hum of the refrigeration unit was low and steady, a kind of mechanical heartbeat. When he reached the back doors, he paused. The seal caught his eye again, that new gleaming bolt pressed tight like a secret. The number on it, 992784, was etched cleanly. He remembered it from the paperwork, but still felt the need to read it again, like a verse from a prayer you don't believe but can't forget. As he stood there, a shadow moved at the edge of his vision. "Needin' a hand, man." The voice belonged to another trucker, a big guy with a beard that looked like it could stop bullets, leaning against a faded Freightliner with Louisiana plates. His name patch read, Cole. "Nah," Mike said. "Just checking temperature." Cole spat into the dust. "These reefer loads, they're never just vegetables, are they?" Mike gave a small laugh, the polite kind. "What makes you say that?" "Been down to Laredo too many times," Cole said, eyes narrowing. "Every time a broker says, 'Don't break the seal,' it's either pharmaceuticals, guns, or somebody's idea of a retirement plan." Mike shook his head. "This one's produce, contracted through Morales Freight." "Benny Morales?" Cole whistled. "Man's a ghost story in some circles. Pays good, but he's always got an angle." Mike stiffened. He didn't like the turn this was taking. "You know him?" "Met him once," Cole said. "Years back, Tucson yard. He had this driver, young guy, family, you know the type. Took a sealed run out of Nogales. Never made it to Flagstaff. Rig found abandoned off I-17. Trailer empty. Cops said it was cartel-related." Mike frowned. Stories travel faster than facts in this business. Cole smiled, showing the toothpick between his teeth. "Sure. But facts don't disappear off the map." He tipped his hat and lumbered back to his truck, leaving Mike alone with the hum of his reefer and a stomach suddenly tight. He climbed into Bertie's cab, shut the door, and sat for a moment, the engine idling low. His phone buzzed, a text from Benny. "Everything smooth? Keep rolling, my man. No delays, no inspections. You're golden." Mike stared at it. No inspections? That wasn't just odd. It was suicide. Random checks were part of the job. Avoiding them made you look guilty. He started typing a response, all good. ETA on time. Then paused. His thumb hovered over the screen. He deleted the line and replaced it with, all good. On schedule. He hit send. The phone buzzed again, almost instantly. "Attaboy. Don't worry if anyone asks about the cargo. Just say produce and keep it moving." He tossed the phone onto the passenger seat, jaw tightening. "Produce," he muttered. "Right." The next 100 miles felt heavier than they should have. The highway shimmered under heat like the road itself was breathing. He cranked the AC, turned on the radio, an AM talk show out of Albuquerque arguing about border policies. He switched it off after a minute. Around noon, he stopped at a truck plaza in Las Cruces to grab lunch, a sandwich, gas, and a refill of black coffee that tasted faintly of cardboard. Inside the diner, the air conditioner fought a losing war with the desert. A waitress with tired eyes poured him coffee without asking. Her name tag said, Rosa. "You headed north?" she asked, wiping the counter. "Denver," he said. "Just passing through." She nodded. "A lot of trucks from Laredo lately." "New contracts, maybe." "Maybe." She looked at him for a moment longer than polite. "You be careful out there," she said softly. "Roads are not safe these days." Something about the way she said it made his chest tighten. Not just a warning, a knowing. When he got back to his truck, the wind had picked up. Dust devils danced across the asphalt like small, angry ghosts. He climbed into the cab, checked the mirror. Everything seemed fine. The reefer gauge still read 34. He was just about to pull out when he noticed a smudge near the back doors. A dark fingerprint, half wiped away, right beside the shiny new seal. He frowned, jumped down again, and walked to the rear. The fingerprint was real. Fresh, still damp, the edges of it catching the sunlight. He ran a gloved finger over it. Smelled faintly of metal, maybe sweat. The warehouse guys could have left it, or maybe the guard, or maybe... He stopped himself. Paranoia was poison on the road. Still, as he climbed back into Birdie and hit the highway again, the fingerprint stayed with him, like an itch beneath the skin. By the time dusk fell, he was somewhere between Deming and Lordsburg, a stretch of land so empty you could feel your own thoughts echo. The desert glowed orange, then purple, then sank into black. The reefer hummed, the tires sang. He flicked on the CB, hoping for chatter. Nothing but static. Then, faint under the hum, a sound. A dull, rhythmic thud from behind. He froze. The noise came again. 2 knocks, then silence. He glanced at the reefer gauge. Still 34. No alarms. The vibration of the road, maybe. Cargo shifting. Happens all the time. But then came something else. A voice. Muffled, faint, like a ghost whispering through steel. Mike's hands tightened on the wheel. He turned off the radio, leaned closer. The noise stopped. He waited. The hum of the engine filled the silence. Nothing. Just the compressor, he told himself aloud. Just the damn compressor. He cranked the music, old Tom Petty, loud enough to drown doubt, and kept rolling. But as the miles stretched ahead and the road wound darker and lonelier, one thought kept circling his mind, round and round, like a vulture that refused to land. If that was the compressor, why did it sound like someone knocking for help? The night spread out like a black ocean, and Mike Donovan's truck was the only ship afloat. He'd been driving for nearly 14 hours straight, his mind caught in that half-trance where the lines on the highway melt together and the hum of the wheels becomes a kind of lullaby. Somewhere past Deming, the desert had swallowed all signs of civilization. No motels, no towns, not even a gas station billboard. Just him, Birdie, and the long stretch of asphalt that never seemed to end. The sky above was so clear it almost looked fake. Stars spilled across it like someone had torn open a sack of diamonds. The reefer unit behind him throbbed softly, a steady heartbeat that usually meant peace of mind. But tonight, it didn't sound the same. Ever since that knocking earlier, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He'd convinced himself it was the compressor, maybe a loose bracket, something mechanical. But the more he told himself that, the less he believed it. He flicked the cabin lights on for a moment, the glow washing over the dashboard, catching the edge of his daughter's photo. Evelyn, 13 years old in that picture, barefoot in a creek, laughing at something he couldn't remember now. He used to think that laugh could cut through anything. Divorce hearings, layoffs, loneliness. Now it was just a photograph, curling slightly at the edges. He rubbed a hand across his face. "You're getting jumpy, Donnie," he muttered. "Too much coffee, too much dessert." Still, his eyes kept flicking to the side mirrors, twin slices of blackness reflecting nothing but the faint gleam of his own taillights. He switched on the CB radio, hoping for noise. "Breaker 19, he said. Anyone northbound past Lordsburg, talk to me. How's the road up there? Static. Then a crackle. A voice came through, low and rough, maybe an hour ahead of him. North's clear, brother. Wind's picking up, though. Watch your load if you're running a box. Copy that, Mike said. Appreciate it. No problem, the voice replied. Then, after a beat, you hauling something cold? Your reefer's loud as hell. Picked you up back near Deming. Sounds like a jet back there. Mike blinked. Yeah, produce, fresh out of Laredo. The radio hissed again. Produce, huh? Must be heavy. Keep her sealed, friend. Some loads better left alone. And then, silence. Mike reached for the dial, but the signal was gone. The CB hissed quietly like a snake in the dark. He drove another 40 miles before it happened again. Bang. A single, heavy knock from inside the trailer, sharp enough to cut through the road noise. Mike's hand went to the wheel instinctively. Birdie swayed slightly, tires kissing the shoulder line before he corrected her. He turned down the radio. The reefer droned on. Then, bang, bang, followed by something that sounded too much like a voice. Faint, desperate, rising and falling against the hum of machinery. He slowed to 60. His pulse drummed in his ears. Jesus, he whispered. He considered pulling over. Every instinct screamed, don't. Stopping on a deserted highway at midnight wasn't smart. Not with a sealed load, not with a contract like this. But those knocks hadn't come from metal shifting. He'd hauled enough freight to know the difference between cargo settling and someone moving. He checked the mirror again. The rear lights flickered across the trailer's silver skin, smooth, untouched. Then another sound. Softer, like a hand pressing against the inside wall. He eased the rig onto the shoulder, gravel crunching beneath the tires. The truck hissed as the air brakes locked. The desert went silent except for the low growl of the reefer. He killed the headlights. For a long moment, he just sat there, listening. His heart hammered against his ribs. Then he heard it again. Not knocking this time. Crying. Muffled, low, definitely human. He opened the door, boots hitting the gravel. The air was cold and dry, the kind of chill that carried whispers. He walked toward the back of the trailer, flashlight in hand. Each step sounded too loud. The reefer unit clicked and sighed. The seal gleamed in his beam of light, unbroken. Perfect. He pressed his ear against the metal wall. At first, nothing. Just the hum. Then, a sob, a cough, and then words, faint in Spanish. Por favor. Please. Mike stepped back, his mouth dry. He looked at the seal again, that polished little bolt with its number carved like a warning. If he broke it, Benny would know. The shipper would know. Hell, the authorities might get involved. A broken seal meant tampering, automatic fine, possible charges, loss of his license. And if whatever was inside wasn't produce, he took a deep breath, flashlight trembling slightly in his hand. Another voice came, this one weaker. A child's voice. Mike's heart twisted. He turned toward the cab, indecision fighting instinct. The law said don't touch it. His gut said the law could go to hell. He climbed back into Birdie and sat there, staring at the mirror where the trailer disappeared into darkness. He reached for his phone and scrolled to Benny's number. Before he could call, a text buzzed through. Keep it rolling, Donnie. No unscheduled stops. Everything's fine. Mike stared at the message. He hadn't even told Benny he'd stopped. He dropped the phone like it burned him. His thumb hovered over the ignition key. Start the engine. Drive. Pretend you heard nothing. That was the smart move. The safe move. But the child's voice echoed in his head, that small, cracked, poor favor. He swallowed hard. God damn it. He grabbed his gloves, flashlight, and a crowbar from under the passenger seat. The desert wind pressed against the side of the trailer, whispering secrets it wasn't supposed to know. As he stepped toward the back, gravel crunching beneath his boots, Mike realized something had shifted inside him. Something he couldn't take back. Whatever was inside that trailer wasn't produce. And the second he broke that seal, there'd be no going back. He pressed his hand against the cold metal. "Hang on," he whispered. "I'm coming." And then he slid the crowbar beneath the latch. The seal snapped with a dull metallic crack that echoed across the empty desert. For a moment, nothing moved. No wind. No hum. Just the dry, absolute silence that lives only on the far side of midnight. Mike stood frozen, crowbar still in his hand. The bolt seal dangled, broken, at his feet. His heart was a sledgehammer in his chest. He gripped the latch, pulled it loose, and swung the heavy doors open. The refrigerated air rushed out, sharp, cold, carrying a smell that wasn't vegetables. It was human. Sweat, fear, breath gone stale. And then he saw them. 10 shapes huddled together among the empty produce crates. Men, women, one child. A boy no older than 8. Faces pale and gaunt in the beam of his flashlight. Their eyes wide, terrified, half expecting the blow that always comes next. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then a man in the back, maybe in his 30s, stepped forward slowly, hands raised. "Por favor, no policía," he whispered. "We pay already. We know bad people." Mike blinked, disoriented. Jesus Christ. He took a step back. You were in here the whole time?" The man nodded. His lips were blue. "From Nuevo Laredo," he said haltingly. "They say, Colorado. Work, family, waiting?" A woman cradled the boy against her chest, rocking him gently. His face was red with cold, his eyelids fluttering. Mike's stomach twisted. The temperature inside must have been barely above freezing. He shone the light across the floor, a few empty water bottles, one ripped plastic bag of tortillas, nothing else. "How long you been in here?" Mike asked, voice tight. The man shrugged weakly. "Since yesterday. Long time, too cold." Mike swore under his breath, pulling off his gloves. He motioned toward the open doors. "Get out, all of you. Come on." They hesitated, all except the boy, who stared at him with a dazed, unblinking look. "It's okay," Mike said, softer this time. "You're safe. Come on." They began to move, stumbling out one by one, their breath fogging in the frigid air. The youngest woman nearly fell. Mike caught her by the arm. Her skin was like ice. They stood there in the moonlight, shivering, blinking at the sudden space around them like animals released from a cage. Mike looked at the broken seal lying in the dirt. In that instant, he knew exactly what he'd done. He'd crossed a line you don't come back from. If he called the police now, he'd be arrested on the spot. Human trafficking, conspiracy, transport of undocumented persons. The kind of charges that didn't care about good intentions. He'd lose his truck, his license, maybe the rest of his life. But if he didn't call, he looked at the boy again. The kid was breathing shallow, head lolling against his mother's shoulder. "Damn it," Mike whispered. "You can't leave them here." He motioned them toward the cab. "Come on, in the truck. It's warm up front." The man shook his head. "No, you get in trouble." "I'm already in trouble," Mike said. They hesitated, then began to climb in, 2 in the passenger seat, the rest under the sleeper bunk and in the narrow space behind it. The boy's mother sat nearest the dash, holding him close. Mike draped his spare jacket over the kid's shoulders. He started the engine. Birdie roared to life, headlights slicing through the night. The woman looked at him, eyes wet. "You help us?" He nodded. "I'll try." She whispered something, maybe a prayer. As they rolled back onto the highway, the wind cut across the open desert, howling against the cab. The reefer still ran behind them, empty now except for the ghost of cold air. Mike's hands shook on the wheel. His mind was a tornado. He grabbed his phone and scrolled to Benny's number. His thumb hovered over call for a full minute before he hit it. The line clicked instantly. "Donnie!" Benny's voice came bright and friendly, like nothing in the world was wrong. "You better be halfway through New Mexico by now." "What the hell did you put in my truck, Benny?" Mike's voice came out low, ragged. A pause. Then, "What do you mean?" "I opened the trailer," Mike said. "There's people in there. 10 of them. You hear me? People." "Damn it, Mike," Benny snapped, the friendly tone vanishing. "You broke the seal?" "I had to. They were freezing to death." Benny's voice dropped to a hiss. "You don't understand what you've done. You're in deep now, brother. Those aren't your problem. You just drive. Keep your mouth shut and deliver the load. You get paid, you walk away." "Deliver them? To who?" "Not your concern." "The hell it isn't," Mike shouted. "They're human beings, Benny." On the other end, silence. Then, "You want to play hero? Go ahead. But heroes don't get paid, they get buried. You keep driving, or someone will come make sure you stop. Understand?" The line went dead. Mike threw the phone onto the passenger seat. His jaw clenched. Son of a bitch. He looked at the faces around him, fear, exhaustion, and something worse. Trust. They were counting on him now. He turned the radio off, drove in silence for a long time. The woman beside him reached over, touching his arm lightly. "Gracias," she whispered. Mike nodded, staring straight ahead at the empty stretch of road. He'd spent his whole life hauling freight. But tonight, for the first time, he understood what real weight felt like. Not steel, not produce, not the miles. This was heavier. The kind of weight that sits on your conscience and never lets go. The dawn came crawling out of the desert, pink and tired. Mike had driven through the night, trying to make distance between himself and Laredo, between himself and whatever the hell Benny had dragged him into. The road stretched ahead in a long, endless ribbon, cutting through the scrub and the low mesas like an old scar. Inside the cab, the air was heavy. 10 people crammed into a space meant for one. The smell of sweat, fear, and damp clothes mixed with a sharp scent of diesel. No one spoke for a long time. Mike's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. His eyes burned from exhaustion, but he couldn't stop. Every mile that rolled under his tires only tightened the knot in his gut. The boy's mother, Maria, she'd said her name was, sat beside him, the child sleeping fitfully against her lap. His small hands were cracked from cold. Mike had wrapped him in an old flannel blanket, the one he used to keep in case Birdie ever broke down in winter. "Thank you," Maria said quietly, her English soft but careful. "We thought we'd die in there." Mike didn't answer right away. The words jammed in his throat. "You shouldn't have been in there at all," he finally said. "We pay," she said. "Man at border say we pay. We ride to Colorado, work and farm. My brother there. He wait." Mike stared at the horizon, the sun bleeding through the windshield. "They told you it was safe?" She nodded. "They say America is good." Mike almost laughed, but it came out broken. "Yeah, That's what they always say. He fell silent again. The hum of the road filled the space between them. Around 8 o'clock, he pulled into a dusty truck stop outside Socorro, New Mexico. The sign said, "Big Sky Diner and Fuel," letters peeling in the morning heat. He parked behind the last fuel island, away from the main lot, where no one would see too much. "Stay inside," he told them. "Lock the doors. Don't open for anyone but me." The man who had spoken the night before, older, strong despite the exhaustion, nodded. "We wait." Mike grabbed his phone, stepped out into the glaring sunlight, and walked around to the far side of the truck, away from curious eyes. His boots crunched in the gravel. He scrolled through his contacts and hit call again. Benny answered on the first ring. "You're alive." That's a start. "What the hell is going on, Benny?" Mike hissed. "You said produce." "And I said don't open the damn trailer." Benny shot back. "You broke the deal, Mike. You're in it now, whether you like it or not. I've got 10 people in my truck. A kid. You didn't think I'd find out?" Benny's voice turned cold. "You listen to me, old man. You call anyone, you're done. They'll pin it all on you. You were the driver. You signed the bills. You broke the seal. You're the smuggler now. You get caught, it's your ass in federal prison, not mine." Mike gritted his teeth. "I could tell them everything. Your name. Your operation. You think I won't?" A low chuckle came through the speaker. "You think my name's real? You think I used a number they can trace? Come on, Donovan. You know the game. You just never thought you'd play it." Mike's hand shook. "I should have never taken your load." "Should've, could've, didn't," Benny said. "Now listen. You've got 2 options. Option 1. Keep driving, drop the trailer in Denver, walk away like nothing happened. I'll make sure your payment clears. Double what I promised. Option 2. Get righteous, call the cops, and you'll spend the rest of your life explaining why 10 illegals were freezing in your rig. They'll take your license, your truck, your house. And that boy? He'll end up in a detention center faster than you can say mercy." The line went dead. Mike stood there for a long moment, the desert wind whipping dust around his boots. His mouth felt dry, like it had been filled with sand. He looked up at the truck. 10 souls waiting inside. 10 lives depending on a man who couldn't even keep his own together. He pulled open the cab door. Maria's eyes met his. "You talked to him?" she asked. "Yeah," Mike said. "He's not sending help." "What we do?" He didn't have an answer. He slumped into the driver's seat and stared at the dashboard. The reflection of his own face in the windshield looked older than he remembered. The lines deeper, the eyes more tired. All his life, Mike Donovan had followed the rules. Even when life kicked him in the teeth, he played it straight. But the rules had brought him here. A criminal by accident, a smuggler by silence. He rubbed his temples. "If I turn you in, they'll deport you," he said slowly. "If I don't, they'll come after me. Either way, somebody loses." Maria looked down at her son. "He's sick," she whispered. "Cold too long. He need doctor." That landed like a hammer to the chest. Mike reached over, touched the boy's forehead, hot as a furnace. He cursed under his breath. Jesus Christ. He started the engine. "Where we go?" Maria asked. "North," he said. "Find somewhere safe." "Safe?" She sounded uncertain. He nodded. "For now." As the truck pulled back onto the highway, the sun climbed higher, baking the asphalt until it shimmered. Mike didn't know what waited ahead. Police checkpoints, cartel tail cars, Benny's threats. Maybe all of them. But for the first time in his life, He wasn't driving for money. He was driving for something he couldn't name. Maybe redemption, maybe decency. Maybe just to make sure that little boy lived to see another morning. The radio crackled faintly, an old gospel song cutting through the static. He turned it up. For the first time in days, the sound didn't make him feel alone. By late afternoon, the horizon shimmered like a mirage, heat rippling above the blacktop, bending the air. Mike's eyes felt dry, the world blurry at the edges. He hadn't slept in nearly 2 days, but stopping wasn't an option. Every rest area, every gas station, every highway patrol car in the distance looked like a threat. They were halfway across New Mexico now, the sun sinking toward the line of mountains in the west. Birdie's engine hummed steady, but the reefer unit had started coughing, sputtering. The gauge on the panel flickered between 34 and 38 degrees. Maria sat quiet beside him, the boy asleep again under the blanket. His breathing was shallow, his lips cracked. Mike had given him the last of his bottled water hours ago. In the back, the others murmured softly in Spanish, their voices tired and frightened. The truck felt like a moving prayer, whispered, desperate and half-believed. When the temperature alarm finally beeped, one sharp, shrill note, Mike's heart sank. He pulled off the highway near a dusty service road, the kind that led nowhere. The desert stretched out on all sides, red and empty. He killed the engine and climbed out. The heat slapped him in the face like an open hand. He walked around to the trailer, kicked at the reefer housing, and checked the diagnostic screen. A warning flashed in angry orange letters. Coolant failure. He swore under his breath. A minute later, the man named Javier, the one who'd spoken first, climbed down from the cab. Problem? He asked. Coolant's shot, Mike said. Reefer's dying. Javier's brow furrowed. Bad? Bad, Mike said. That box gets above 40 degrees. You'll cook inside it, even with the vents open. He leaned against the trailer, thinking. The sky had turned the color of rust, streaked with thin clouds. The air was still, but heavy. The kind of stillness that came before a sandstorm. He could fix the coolant line, maybe. But he didn't have the tools, or the parts, or the time. And he sure as hell couldn't risk stopping at a shop. Then we go outside, Javier said simply. Mike looked at him. You can't just... Better sun than no air, Javier said. We die in box. We maybe live outside. Mike hesitated. He thought about Benny's voice, cold and smug. Keep your mouth shut. Deliver the load. Then he thought about the boy. Get everyone out, he said finally. Now. The doors creaked open, and the others stumbled into the fading light, shielding their eyes. The desert swallowed them, thin figures against an endless red plain. Mike climbed into the trailer and tore open the emergency vent, letting hot air rush through. The cold inside was already fading, replaced by the sour heat of machinery gone wrong. When he climbed back down, Maria was kneeling beside her son, whispering to him. The boy's eyes fluttered. He needs water, Mike said. And shade. There is no shade, Javier said, scanning the horizon. Mike looked toward a low ridge in the distance, maybe a half-mile away. A few scrub trees, barely more than silhouettes. There, he said. We'll wait until dark, then move north. He helped them carry what little they had, a few plastic bottles, a torn blanket, a bundle of clothes. The desert floor was hot enough to sting through his boots. When they reached the ridge, the temperature had begun to fall, but the wind was rising. A dry, whispering wind that carried grit and ghosts. They huddled beneath the trees as the light bled away. The boy drank from a cracked bottle cap, drops falling down his chin. Mike sat apart, staring at Birdie down below, a lone truck in a sea of dust. She looked small from here, like she'd been left behind by the world. He pulled out his phone again. No signal. Of course not. He sat there, staring at the blank screen, and for the first time in years, he prayed. Not to any god in particular, just to the empty sky. A faint sound drifted across the desert, the low rumble of engines. 2, maybe 3 vehicles, far off but closing. Headlights bobbed on the horizon, moving fast. Mike stood up, heart hammering. "We've got company," he said. Javier rose beside him, eyes narrowing. "Police?" Mike shook his head. "No. Not that kind of company." The lights split, one truck pulling off to the right, another holding center. Whoever they were, they knew how to flank. Benny's men. It had to be. "Stay down," Mike said. "Don't move." He sprinted back toward Birdie, sand biting at his face. The truck's engine turned over with a roar. He slammed it into gear, spun the wheel hard, and gunned it down the dirt road, headlights off. The desert exploded into chaos, engines behind him, dust clouds swirling, shouts in Spanish and English echoing across the night. "Come on, Birdie," he muttered through clenched teeth. "Don't you quit on me now." He hit the paved highway, tires screaming. 2 sets of headlights followed, a black pickup and a white SUV. The pickup pulled closer, high beams flashing. Mike jerked the wheel, throwing gravel. The pickup swung wide, trying to box him in. Someone leaned out the window, a man in a mask, rifle glinting under the moon. Mike swore and slammed the brakes. The pickup overshot, fishtailing. He floored the gas, ramming Birdie's grill into the truck's rear corner. Metals screamed. The pickup spun, slammed into the guardrail, and vanished into the dust. The SUV was still coming. Mike's pulse pounded like thunder. He checked the mirror, Maria and the others still crouched by the ridge, safe for now. He drove another mile, then cut the lights and veered down a side road, coasting to a stop. He killed the engine, breath ragged, and listened. The SUV roared past on the main road, headlights blazing. Then, silence. He waited another full minute before he let himself breathe. When he finally stepped out, the desert was quiet again. He walked back toward the ridge, flashlight low. The group was still there, huddled close, eyes wide. "Safe," he said, voice trembling. "For now." Maria looked up at him, tears streaking the dust on her face. "They come back?" "Probably," he admitted, "but not tonight." Javier stepped forward. "You risk for us," he said quietly. "Why?" Mike looked at him for a long moment, then at the boy sleeping in his mother's arms. "Because somebody should have," he said. Above them, the desert sky stretched wide and merciless, 1,000 stars watching and saying nothing. Mike leaned against the truck, staring north. Somewhere out there the border ended, but the choices didn't. He was beyond saving himself now. But maybe, just maybe, he could still save them. By morning, the desert looked like nothing had happened, just endless dust and light. But Mike Donovan knew better. He could still see the black pickup spinning out in his mirrors, still hear the metallic scream of the crash. He'd been on the road since dawn, driving blind with no plan except away. Maria sat silent beside him, her boy's head resting in her lap. The others rode in the sleeper, taking turns lying down, too afraid to breathe near the windows. The air inside the cab was thick, smelling of dust, sweat, and old diesel. Mike's hands ached from gripping the wheel. His back burned. His mind was a tight coil of adrenaline and guilt. They were somewhere north of Albuquerque now, climbing toward the plains. The world had turned greener, but not friendlier. He kept checking the mirror, always the mirror. "Mike," Maria said softly, "you no sleep?" He shook his head. "Can't. You help us. Maybe we safe now." Mike almost smiled. "Safe doesn't last long out here." The words had barely left his mouth when his phone buzzed. No caller ID, just the same unknown number that had sent Benny's last message. He hesitated before answering. "Yeah, Donovan." The voice was new, low even, without Benny's slick charm. "You've got something that doesn't belong to you?" Mike's jaw tightened. "Who is this?" "You broke contract property," the voice said. "That property's breathing. You understand how that looks?" "Pretty damn human to me." A pause, then a dry laugh. "You got guts, I'll give you that. Here's what's gonna happen. You'll pull off at exit 42. There's an abandoned way station. Leave the truck there, walk away. If you don't, we'll take it back the hard way." The line went dead. Mike's pulse hammered. He checked the GPS. Exit 42 was 30 miles ahead. Maria watched him, sensing the shift. "What is it?" "Trouble," he said. "Big one." Javier climbed forward from the sleeper. "They find us?" "Yeah," Mike said. "And they're coming." As if on cue, the CB radio crackled to life. A burst of static, then a voice. "Eastbound Kenworth, blue cab, pulling a white reefer. You got friends behind you. Better make peace before they make it for you." Mike grabbed the mic. "Who's this?" But the radio went dead again. He looked in the mirror, and there they were. Two vehicles this time, a dark pickup and a silver SUV, maybe half a mile back. "Seatbelts," he said. His voice came out calm, but his heart was trying to climb through his throat. He floored it. Birdie roared, diesel coughing smoke into the morning air. The needle climbed past 70, 75. "Mike," Maria cried. "They want the truck, they'll have to earn it." The road curved along a narrow ridge. No shoulder, just open air on both sides. The pickup closed fast, engine snarling. One of the men leaned out with something black and long, not a rifle this time. A harpoon gun, or maybe a grappling hook. Before Mike could react, the line shot out and latched onto Birdie's rear latch. "What the hell?" He swerved, feeling the truck jerk sideways. The trailer fishtailed, tires screaming. The boy cried out in the back. "Hold on," Mike shouted. He cut the wheel hard, slamming Birdie against the outer guardrail. Sparks exploded like fireworks. The cable snapped, the pickup veering off into the ditch. But the SUV kept coming. Mike spotted a semi up ahead, a red Peterbilt, hauling a flatbed loaded with steel coils. He flashed his high beams. The other driver must have seen the chase because he eased to the left, blocking the lane. Mike took the right. The SUV tried to squeeze between them, too narrow. Metal shrieked. The SUV scraped the flatbed, sparks flying, glass shattering. It fell back. Mike whooped once, a short, bitter laugh. "That's right. Come on, you bastards." But his victory died quick. In the mirror, he saw flashing lights, not cartel black now, but red and blue. Border Patrol, maybe state police. It didn't matter. They'd all see the same thing. A trucker running hard with a trailer full of undocumented souls. "Mike," Maria's voice cracked. "What do we do?" He thought fast. "There's a service road up ahead. Hold tight." He hit the turn signal, even though it was absurd, and then yanked the wheel, cutting onto a dirt road that led toward a dry riverbed. Dust exploded behind them, swallowing the flashing lights. The truck jolted, bouncing over rocks and ruts. Maria held the boy tight, whispering prayers. After half a mile, the engine began to cough. The temperature gauge climbed. "Come on, Bertie," he muttered. "Don't you die on me now." The radio blared again. Police chatter, fast and clipped. They were coordinating. They'd boxed him in. He could keep running, maybe for another 10 minutes, maybe less. Or he could stop now before someone got killed. He glanced at the child in Maria's arms. The boy was awake now, eyes wide and glassy. He wasn't crying anymore, just staring at Mike with that hollow, frightened look that said he already knew too much about the world. Mike's breath caught. "No more running," he said quietly. He slowed the truck, easing to a stop beneath a bridge. The engine ticked as it cooled. Maria turned to him, eyes wet. "They come?" "Yeah," he said. "They'll be here soon." Javier gripped his shoulder. "You save us. Let us go." Mike hesitated. "Please," Javier said. "We can run, hide, you stay. Say nothing." Mike looked at the cracked windshield, at the reflection of his own face, lined, tired, already halfway guilty. He nodded once. "Go." They opened the passenger door, one by one, disappearing into the dry ravine, ghosts slipping back into the land that had almost swallowed them. Maria was last. She hesitated, hand on the door. "You good man," she said. He shook his head. "Just lay to it." She smiled faintly, then ran into the desert, her boy in her arms. Mike sat there, alone now. Sirens grew louder in the distance. The road shimmered with light. He took one last deep breath and reached for the CB mic. "Breaker 19, he said. His voice was calm, steady. "This is Donovan, Unit 827. I'm pulled over under the bridge at mile marker 172. I'm unarmed. The trailer's empty." He set the mic down. Outside, the dust began to rise again. Not from the wind this time, but from the convoy of vehicles closing in. He leaned back in his seat, eyes half closed. For the first time in days, the road was quiet. The desert wind had a way of making everything sound like a secret. When Mike Donovan stepped out of his truck, the sound of the sirens faded into that dry, endless hush. His boots sank slightly into the sand. The flashing red and blue lights painted the canyon walls, flickering across Bertie's chrome grille like a heartbeat that couldn't make up its mind. He lifted his hands, slowly. The first Border Patrol SUV screeched to a halt 20 yards away. 2 agents jumped out, guns raised. "Driver, step away from the vehicle." Mike did, step by step, hands high, palms open. "Don't shoot," he said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears, cracked, distant. "I'm not armed." They cuffed him fast, pushing him against the hood of his own truck. The metal burned against his skin. "What's in the trailer?" one of the agents barked. "Nothing," Mike said. "Not anymore." "Not anymore." He didn't answer. A second SUV pulled up, then a third. Dust and headlights and the noise of authority filled the space where silence used to live. One of the agents, younger, nervous, climbed onto the trailer's latch and yanked the doors open. The inside was empty. Just cold air, frost melting along the floor, condensation dripping like sweat. "Looks clear," the agent called. "Empty," another said, "but the seal's broken." They turned back to Mike. "Where's the cargo?" He swallowed hard. "Gone." "Gone where?" He looked out toward the horizon. The desert stretched on forever, glowing faintly under the moonlight. He imagined Maria and the others out there. Small shadows moving north, swallowed by the dark. "Don't know," he said. Didn't ask. The agent stepped closer. You expect us to believe you didn't know what you were hauling? Mike met his eyes. Didn't know when I started, he said quietly. But I do now. They shoved him into the back of the SUV, the cuffs biting into his wrists. Bertie sat idling behind them, trailer doors wide open like a wound. As they drove away, he caught one last glimpse of her through the rear window, her headlights dimming in the dust. He thought about the first time he'd driven her off the lot, bright and clean, the world wide open in front of him. He thought about Evelyn, his daughter, how proud she'd been when he told her he owned his own rig. "You're your own boss now, Daddy," she'd said. He'd smiled then. He didn't smile now. The SUV jostled along the dirt road until it met the highway. Ahead, a convoy of flashing lights waited. Border Patrol, state police, maybe the feds. It didn't matter anymore. "Name?" one of the agents in the front asked, already looking at a tablet. "Donovan. Michael Allen." "Home address?" "Kansas City, Missouri." The younger agent turned slightly in his seat. "You know what you're looking at here, Mr. Donovan? Human trafficking. 10 people. You're lucky we didn't find bodies." Mike's throat tightened. They were alive. The agent looked at him for a long moment. "Maybe thanks to you," he said. "But that's not how the report's gonna read." The older agent glanced in the mirror. "We'll see what the DA says. Not our call." Mike leaned his head against the window, watching the desert slide past. The sky was starting to pale. Not quite morning. Not quite night. That strange hour where even the sun seems uncertain. In that in-between light, he saw something move along the ridge, maybe a trick of the eyes, maybe not. A dark line of figures slipping through the sand, vanishing into the folds of the earth. He closed his eyes. They booked him in a holding station near Santa Fe, a low building that smelled of bleach and tired paperwork. They took his wallet, his phone, and his keys. One agent, the younger one, lingered as they processed him. "You could have run," the man said quietly. "Why stop?" Mike thought for a long moment before answering. "Because they couldn't." The agent nodded once, like he understood, then handed the paperwork off and walked away. They put Mike in a small cell. 4 walls, 1 bench, 1 flickering light. He sat there in silence, staring at the cracked paint. Every sound in the hallway, every door slam, every cough came muffled, distant. He'd always thought freedom meant the open road, but sitting there, cuffed and waiting, he realized it had never been the road that mattered. It was the choice, the why behind every mile. Hours passed, maybe more. He lost count. When they finally came for him, the sky outside had turned gray. 2 men in suits stood waiting, 1 federal, 1 state. They didn't look like villains, just men doing their job. "Mr. Donovan," the older one said, "we have some questions." Mike stood slowly. "I bet you do." As they led him down the hall, he glanced through the narrow window beside the exit. Out there in the distance, the highway shimmered in the rising sun. For the first time since Laredo, he felt something close to peace. Because somewhere out there, far from this station, far from Benny, far from the lies, 10 people were still breathing. And that, he decided, was enough. 6 months later, the courthouse in Santa Fe smelled like coffee and cold marble. The kind of smell that said nothing good ever started here. Mike Donovan sat at the defense table in an ill-fitting suit borrowed from the county lockup's church clothes closet. His hair was shorter now, streaked with gray he swore hadn't been there before. His wrists were free, but they felt heavy anyway. The nameplate in front of him read, United States vs. Donovan, Michael Allen. The charge, transportation of undocumented persons for financial gain, a federal felony. He could have taken the plea deal, 2 years, maybe 18 months with good behavior. But something in him refused. He wanted the truth on record, even if no one believed it. The courtroom was half full. A few reporters, a cluster of drivers from his old company. No family, not even a letter from Evelyn. He didn't blame her. At the prosecution table, Assistant U.S. Attorney Rachel Klein was everything the system liked: crisp, composed, righteous. Her stack of papers looked taller than she was. When the judge, an older man with kind eyes and a voice like gravel, called the court to order, Mike straightened in his chair. Klein opened strong. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a case about responsibility. The defendant, Michael Donovan, was found in possession of a commercial vehicle containing 10 undocumented individuals, including a child, hidden in a sealed refrigerated trailer. He broke federal law. He endangered lives. And now he must be held accountable. She paced slowly, her heels tapping like a metronome. We are not here to decide whether those individuals deserved compassion. We are here to decide whether the defendant acted knowingly, whether he profited from human cargo. Her gaze flicked toward Mike, and the evidence will show he did. When she sat down, Mike's court-appointed attorney, a thin man named Rogers with sad eyes and a tie older than Mike's truck, rose to his feet. Ladies and gentlemen, Rogers said quietly, you will hear that my client, Mr. Donovan, is guilty of something, but not of greed, of conscience. He paused, letting the words settle. He is guilty of stopping when others would have driven on, of opening a sealed container because he heard crying inside, of choosing life over the law. The judge frowned slightly, but didn't stop him. This case isn't about money, Rogers continued. It's about what a man does when his sense of duty collides with his sense of decency. When the first witness took the stand, a Border Patrol agent, Mike stared at the table, jaw tight. The agent's testimony was clinical. We found the defendant alone at the scene. The individuals were gone. The trailer had been modified for concealment, standard indicators of smuggling. Klein made sure the jury heard every word. Rogers cross-examined, gentle but firm. Agent, is it true the defendant surrendered voluntarily? Yes. And he informed you immediately that he'd opened the trailer because he believed people were in danger? That's correct. No further questions. By the second day, the trial had drawn attention. A local journalist, a woman from the Denver Chronicle named Lila Mercado, sat in the back, scribbling notes. She'd been the first to write about the truck driver who broke the law to save lives. Her article had spread fast, sparking arguments across talk shows and podcasts. Some called him a hero, others called him a traitor. Mike didn't read any of it. When it was his turn to testify, the courtroom went still. He stood, hands clasped in front of him, and spoke in a voice that felt like gravel dragged over years of silence. I'm not a good man, he said. I've cut corners, lied on logs, driven too long without sleep. But I've never left a person to die in my trailer. He looked at the jurors, 9 men, 3 women, all of them wearing that guarded expression people wore when they didn't want to feel too much. I didn't know what I was hauling, he continued. They said it was produce. The rate was too good, but I took it anyway. I was tired. I needed the money. Then I heard the knocking. He swallowed hard. You can't unhear something like that. You either stop or you become someone you don't want to be. Klein stood. Mr. Donovan, you admit you broke the seal, correct? Yes. You admit you knew it was against protocol? Yes. And you released individuals who were in the country illegally? Mike's jaw clenched. I released people who were dying. Klein hesitated. Just a fraction, then nodded. No further questions. The trial lasted 3 days. On the 4th, the jury deliberated for 6 hours. The waiting was worse than the arrest, worse than the cuffs. Mike sat in the holding room, staring at the wall clock. The ticking sounded like a heartbeat he didn't trust. When the bailiff finally led him back into the courtroom, he caught sight of Lila Mercado again. She gave him a small, tight nod. It didn't mean victory, just acknowledgement. The foreman stood. We, the jury, find the defendant, Michael Allen Donovan, guilty of transport of undocumented persons, but recommend leniency due to extenuating circumstances. A murmur swept the room. The judge sighed, leaning forward. Mr. Donovan, I believe you acted with compassion, not malice. But the law does not bend easily. I sentence you to 1 year in federal custody with credit for time served. Mike's chest loosened, not from joy, but from relief. A year. He could live with that. He could live. When they let him out, Lila caught his eye again. This time, she mouthed 2 words. They know. He didn't understand until later, until the story ran nationwide, headlines blazing. Truck drivers sentenced for saving migrants, a system on trial. Public pressure grew. Petition drives, hashtags, editorials. By the time he walked out of prison 11 months later, the world had changed just a little. Not enough, but some. He'd lost his truck, his savings, his license, but not his soul. The day Mike Donovan walked out of the Santa Fe Correctional Facility, the sky was the color of a clean slate, pale blue, wide open, waiting. He had 1 duffel bag, a bus ticket north, and a head full of ghosts. The wind hit him first, dry and warm, smelling faintly of sagebrush and sunburned asphalt. It reminded him of the road, of motion, of everything he'd lost and everything he still owed. Outside the gate, no one was waiting. He didn't expect anyone. Not Evelyn, not Rogers the lawyer, not the journalist who'd written his story. The world didn't do reunions for men like him. He walked to the edge of the lot, where the prison fence gave way to the open highway. A single 18-wheeler rumbled past, silver trailer catching the sun like a mirror. He could almost hear Birdie in it, the steady hum of diesel, the whisper of tires on endless road. He hadn't driven since the arrest. His commercial license was gone, suspended for 5 years. But he'd found another way to make it work. A month before his release, an old buddy from Kansas, Roy Jensen, had sent him a letter. Got an old Peterbilt sitting in my yard. Needs love. I'll sell her cheap if you're man enough to start over. Mike was. Now, 2 weeks later, that same Peterbilt sat in a rented lot behind a gas station outside Pueblo, Colorado. She was an old rig, paint faded, mirrors patched. But her engine had the low, steady rumble of a second chance. He called her Grace. He'd spent the last few days driving her on back roads, hauling scrap for a local yard. No big contracts, no brokers, no hidden cargo. Just small loads, cash jobs, the kind of work that didn't ask questions. And it was enough. That morning, he stopped at a diner off Highway 85, a little place called the Rusty Spoon. It looked like a forgotten chapter of America. Sun-bleached signs, coffee that tasted like metal, and a waitress who called everyone Hon. He sat by the window, sipping from a chipped mug, watching the highway roll by. Outside, a family stood by the shoulder. 2 adults, 2 kids. Brown skin, worn clothes, a cardboard sign, "Need, ride north." Mike froze. The little boy, maybe 7 or 8, was holding a stuffed rabbit by the ears, staring at the trucks passing by. His sister tugged at their mother's hand. The father waved once when a car slowed, then drove on. Mike's chest tightened. The coffee in his mouth turned bitter. He looked down at his hands, scarred, old, still shaking sometimes when the memories came. He thought about the cold air of that trailer, the sound of knocking in the night. Por favor. He thought about Maria's face as she vanished into the desert with her child. He wondered if they'd made it. He hoped so. He tossed a few bills on the counter, nodded to the waitress, and stepped outside. The sun was high now, burning through the clouds. Grace waited in the lot, engine idling low. The paint glimmered faintly, red under dust, stubborn and alive. Mike climbed into the cab, the seat creaking under his weight. He sat there, hands on the wheel, watching the family in his mirror. The mother caught his eye from across the road. Not pleading, not demanding, just looking. He hesitated. He could stop, offer a ride, help them get where they needed to go. But then he remembered the cold clang of the cell door, the trial, the judge's voice. The law does not bend easily. He thought of Evelyn, how she'd finally answered one of his letters while he was inside. "I'm proud of what you did, Dad. Just don't do it again." He looked back at the family one more time. The boy waved, small hand against the glare. Mike took a long breath, turned the key, and eased Grace onto the highway. The rumble of the engine swallowed the world. The family disappeared in the mirror, shrinking into a blur of color and dust. He didn't stop, but he didn't floor it either. He drove slow, steady, eyes fixed on the line where the sky met the road. That fragile place where choices still lived. The radio crackled with static, then found a country station. A man's voice sang about forgiveness and long roads and hearts that don't quit. Mike smiled faintly. The highway rolled beneath him, endless and unjudging. Somewhere up ahead, the world kept turning. He didn't know where he was headed. Maybe Denver. Maybe nowhere. Maybe just forward. He rested one hand on the worn leather wheel and whispered into the hum of the engine, not to anyone in particular. "Keep rolling, Bertie." And the road answered in its quiet, eternal way, the same way it always did, by not answering at all. Now, thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support inspires new stories and keeps the road stretching on.